What's up? Hey everybody, welcome to Hello and welcome to the Earthborne Games podcast. I'm your host, Anders Carlson, and joining me is the cast of Earthborne Games, or shall I say the staff. We've got Evan Simonette. Whoops, wrong order. How's it going, Evan?
Hey, good. I would prefer to continue talking about Legos, but I suppose we can talk about work stuff.
Yeah, we've been talking about Legos and how we can dupe our children into thinking we've bought them new Legos by using our old Legos and then using, graphic designers and on all that, just a really elaborate scheme to not have to pay for Legos.
We have the talent,
And I'm wondering what kind of Lego sets would you guys, create for them?
Well, that's the thing. It could be any kind of Lego set you want.
I was really into building spaceships as a kid, and I'm pretty sure some of my spaceships are still in those bins. You know, they've attritioned a little, falling apart from like movement, but like I bet I could reconstitute a couple of my childhood spaceships from in there.
I was always terrible at building things with Legos. I had terrible imagination for it. So like I think if I were to make a made up Lego set, it would just be like a random mash, a symmetrical mash of Legos in a shape, and then I'd have to come up with a name for it.
And then you'd write the instructions for it and everything. how to assemble that mash.
Yeah, I guess I could do it. I could do like pictures as I go, and then do renders for them.
That'd be kind of cool. Yeah,
you're an artist.
I don't know what to tell you.
Legos just don't spark it.
No, there's something about
square.
the medium that I don't know. I don't think I spent enough time with Legos as a kid to really, or like building sets that actually worked. Every time I played with Legos, It was just, here's a random assortment of Lego shapes, and I just start putting them together. So it's more like doodling with Legos is what I would do.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I mean, it looked like something-ish, but I wouldn't go in with a vision for what it is.
Yeah, I'm with you. I never liked Legos for the same reason. They're so angular and just rigid, and I guess you need like thousands of Legos to make something actually cool, like they have at the Lego World or whatever. By the way, that's Andrew Navarro, and that's Andrew Fisher. Everyone's been introduced.
Hello, everyone.
This is our Lego day.
That's right.
Do we say Legos or Lego? Like plural. Lego? Legos?
I asked that once because I did an Instagram post with Legos in it, and I asked, is it Legos or Lego? And I think it's Lego.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like it either. I don't like when people do that.
We can say
even if it's correct.
Hell we want. You're not going to stop us.
No. The controllers
dare them to try.
Their Lego cells couldn't hold us when they put us away.
Would you ever say, I'm going to go play with my Lego? You think someone's going to go play with one Lego?
Yeah, totally.
Speaking of Legos, I saw this story today. I didn't click into it, but it looked interesting, where they're making these like sustainably grown like hemp building blocks to build houses out of, but they're effectively just Legos to build like your exterior walls of your house.
Whoa.
Yeah. I think I heard about that too.
And I was like, how long? It's crazy that it's taken this long for like real life Legos to be a thing. I feel like that's something they must have been working on forever.
I would definitely build
it seems
a house
so obvious.
Yeah.
Hemp Block USA.
Maybe.
Revolutionary hempcrete. That's cool.
Anyway,
hempcrete.
It was cool. Yeah. Just build your house like a Lego house.
It doesn't disintegrate in water? I'm curious.
It's probably secretly really efficient, like energy efficient and durable.
It must be. I would think so. Or else
you still
build your house and just washes away. Yeah, it seemed like it would be like it seemed like looking at it, it seemed like it would be like insulation and structure in one.
But the catch is they send you multicolored blocks, so you can't color coordinate your home. You just get a bunch of crappy yellow.
It looks like one of Andrew's creations from his childhood.
Yeah, with all primary colors.
Yeah, I'm into it. Maybe I could afford a house then. That's all I'm thinking. They build, houses out of shipping containers and stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally into it.
I stayed in one of those a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was fascinating. It was like it was very intimate. A friend of mine, invited me to stay. He said, "Just so you know, it's really small." I was like, "Yeah, I know." But then when I got there, I was like, "Wow, it is really small." I was just kind of
really
wedged at the back on this like little kind of half couch with like the refrigerator right there, and the TV was there, and then sink, dishwasher, laundry, washer in the dryer, bathroom, and then their bedroom is at the back. It's just like we were all
was it just one
in one room? Yeah,
it was one shipping container.
One shipping container. It was pretty cool.
Was that?
It was in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Awesome.
Yeah.
I saw they just built one near here, but it's like 6 or 7 combined, but one.
Yeah.
One's the way to go. Anyway, we've got a great show today. We're going to be continuing our countdown of our most influential games. We're on number 3. We're going to talk about what we're doing at Earthborne Games. We're going to talk about things we're into. But first, we've got some excellent questions. We've got quite a few. And I'm going to start it off with a question from our YouTube comments. And this one comes from Roberto. And Roberto says, regarding the pre-order for English version of the game, are you planning on offering English versions from within Europe for pre-order? Straightforward question.
So I'll answer that one. So pretty much anything that is ordered in Europe will come straight from Europe. It's not going we're already planning a print run there. We're not going to ship it from Europe to the US and then back to Europe. So anything, if you ordered English copy in Europe, you'll be getting it from Europe. So it's not going to be traveling all over the place.
I love it. Nice, simple question there. And then we go in from Wardy J Plays. And Wardy J Plays says, you guys mentioned shipping not being crazy expensive because of the local manufacturing and avoidance of shipping across the sea. I am a backer from Australia. Are we here down under going to be hit with the 100 or so shipping cost? Honestly, I'd pay it, but because I'm so hyped, but I'm still curious.
So I thought we should answer this one too for a couple of reasons. I think one, the shipping, I think the importance of shipping, manufacturing where the product is going to be delivered to doesn't necessarily cut down on the shipping cost of that, like something like a postal service or like FedEx or UPS would charge for shipping. What it does save in is freight, and that's the big savings that people have been getting. I mentioned last episode where people are getting hammered on those expenses. So it's the ocean freight of putting everything on a container and then shipping it across the sea. And those costs are so expensive that it's almost impossible unless you're a giant company to not pass that along to the customer or the backer. So obviously in Australia, it wouldn't make it doesn't really make a difference either way. We'll still be shipping those out. I don't know what that shipping is going to cost, but from the manufacturer to Australia. But I'm already planning on eating that expense. But so far it's not $100. Not even close. I'll talk about a little bit more in what I've been doing over the past couple of weeks. But in the current quotes that I have, they're still very similar to the prices on the Kickstarter page, where I think we estimated like $45 for shipping to Australia. And so far it's looking like that. But I'll keep everyone updated. But $100, no, unless something crazy happens between now and when we fulfill, which I guess is possible.
Yeah,
crazy things keep happening, but God, I hope not.
There were some fires down under, I think, before. You never know, but that's good news for the people down under.
Yeah,
we love you down under.
We do. We have a lot of backers in Australia and New Zealand. I don't know if awesome. New Zealand also counts as being down under. They're a little bit above down under.
They're down and underneath us. Is that why they call it that?
I don't know.
In relation to Americans? That's what I always assumed, but that wouldn't really make sense.
Oh, yeah, it would make a lot of sense.
It would be, but why would they refer to themselves as being down under?
Right. Well, maybe because they're talking to us because we're Americans.
A quick Google just says it is because it is below the equator.
Okay.
That's what Google told me. But
that's
I mean,
a lot of things
logic,
under there.
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm down under in Africa, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, are we
down
up
under in Peru?
All right. We got another question from Sean via email. And Sean says, I was wondering if there was a way that you could play Earthborne Rangers in and out with someone, for example. If a friend of mine and I can get together once a month to play a session, but we each have time on our own to play solo, could we structure our play so our time together is centered around the core story, where our solo play is focused more on exploration? Is the relationship between the story and the open world exploration built in such a way where we could part ways on the story, do our own thing, and meet back up at a certain location to keep the story going for the next time we meet up?
I love this question.
Yeah.
I think Andrew mentioned this question to me last week when we were working together when it first came in via email, and I think this is really fun. So the game does not inherently support like players splitting up and playing their own solo sessions simultaneously in the same world per se. However, I feel like this could be pretty easily accomplished with some like pretty light house ruling and kind of agreement on how this was going to work. The game has some pretty discrete story missions, which progress the story and usually have some kind of timer, and then side missions, which are also mission cards that come into play that provide some alternative objectives but aren't critical to the story. And then there's these things we've been calling side activities, which are basically people around the valley who want your help, and if you help them within the day, give you some kind of reward. And so both the side quests and these kind of side activities are not necessarily critical to the story, but instead add context to the world and might give you hints about the main story, but are very easy to kind of explore on your own. So I think if you and your friend wanted to set up the game in such a way where you play through the main story missions and then you break and agree that neither of you will pursue this mission while you're playing on your own, and then the two of you go off and do your own thing and mark down whichever rewards you unlock or achievements you get or different events you trigger, and then come back together and combine your notes together and then pursue the story mission once you're back together. I think that could work with very little kind of retrofitting. Honestly, the biggest challenge would probably just be that some of the more urgent missions, such as a flood early on, have some urgency to them. And so if you kind of broke apart, you had your joint session and then you two went your separate ways, while you're on a story mission with a timer, you might want to suspend that timer, which might kind of kill a little bit of the immersion. But that's maybe a sacrifice that's worth it for the fun of kind of doing your own thing and then coming back together in your once a month session.
Yeah, the idea that I had, which I think you mentioned would probably make the characters a little too powerful, would be that you would essentially go off and explore the world on your own and then come back together to do the story. Mm-hmm. So like essentially put the story on pause while you're exploring and then come back, but you'd have a lot of reward cards by then.
Yeah. All it would do was basically let you kind of level up faster than the story puts pressure on you. So it would make the game a lot easier for you. But, for some people, that's okay. They just want to see the world and then beat the missions. And so if you're okay with that kind of sacrifice, I think that's a totally legitimate way to play.
So cool. Awesome. We're not disappointing the questioners tonight. And we got another one from a superstar question asker. I can't think of a good word to call these people. Listener who's asked a question, Ro. And Ro asks, how did your card design work? Okay. Did you have a list of cool effects and made the artwork happen later? Or was it the other way around, and you had lots of artwork and then designed effects around that art? If so, was there a card that got an effect for the sketch, and its effect got changed when the artwork was finalized? It's a good question.
Yeah, I think, well, we started, I would say, primarily from the design. Though we did have some art pieces that I think informed some design, some sketches and things. But there's definitely been some cards that have changed thematically after we've done artwork. Mostly, I would say traits. But can you think of anything, Fisher, that has changed substantially?
I have a silly example.
Yeah, great.
I do too, I think.
So, pocketed belt pouch started.
Don't tell me that's gone.
No, it's still in the game.
That was like one of the first things I did.
Yeah.
No. So it started as a. Actually, I believe it was in the vertical slice, the demo we had for the Kickstarter. But it started in design as having 2 tokens on it, 2 pockets. The tokens we named pockets, and these were what you could use to search up a gear from your deck. And this was kind of how the design worked. But then we got the art in, and the art distinctly shows 3 pockets on the belt pouch. So we kind of talked it over, would it ruin the balance of the card, and we changed it to have 3 pocket tokens on it since it has 3 pockets in the art.
Oh, that's cool.
there have been some more meaningful ones. We talked about on a previous podcast, we talked about the adaptable multi-tool. And it's this really cool illustration with all these different parts that are kind of hovering in midair and presumably can be reconfigured. And that has really informed how a lot of the technology we think about, a lot of the technology in the Valley, and how they could potentially achieve some of what they're trying to do with their technology. And so that's definitely informed cards where we kind of built on that idea, and then we were designing some of the later cards and, thinking about that technology as we were trying to kind of come up with effects.
Yeah, one I can think of, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but the static sifter was something else before, and it just wasn't cool enough, so we changed it, I think.
Yeah, it was, I forget what it was.
Was it collapsible basket?
Yeah, yes, it was collapsible basket.
Oh, yeah.
But we had a static sifter, so a static sifter is one of the pieces of the technology in the Valley. That's the design is totally changed from, I think, what I had originally envisioned. I originally envisioned it as kind of like a wand or like a scythe that you could pass over vegetation, and it would gather nuts and berries and anything edible and kind of funnel it down into like a little receptacle. Then that's how this is like one of the main tools that the foragers of the Valley would use. And then through designing the artwork, it kind of became more of like a semicircle thing that has a basket underneath it, and it does the same thing. So that was something that was really early on as a cool like piece of technology, piece of the lore that Sam had developed, and then it just kind of got lost through iterations, and then it became the collapsible basket. And then looking at the collapsible basket mechanics, it worked really well with this. It was effectively the same as the static sifter. So when in one of our mini passes of adding theme, I essentially was like, I really miss that static sifter. I'd love to get it back in. And then that was just a really easy target. So not quite the same, but it's a iterative, ongoing process that I think we're mostly done with now, but we don't have all the art in, so there's still could be some changes to come.
Yeah, I will say that just timeline on design versus art. Art just can take a lot longer just because of the sheer amount of it. And so, for example, on the expansion, Brooks is already working hard on the expansion, and we're still working on the art for the core set to get the core set finalized. And so because of that, just because of the necessity of wanting to move it along, some of that design comes before the art. But as you probably heard here, like a lot of that design can kind of be changed and rethemed as we iterate, and Evan comes up with cool ideas, or our artists submit cool sketches. And, we can kind of, one of the benefits of our card effects is that they're abstract enough that they're not necessarily tied to a singular theme. And so we can kind of take a look at that and take a look at how we want to approach the art and kind of massage things to make it work. So in the end, even though we're getting a head start on, all of the expansion content design-wise, the art will still inform it, even though the art is coming later.
Yeah, I think another thing that informs it too, beyond the art, is play. I feel like we've made a lot of adjustments through playtesting, and at least I know that I've made a lot of notes in playtesting about this. This test in this card feels weird for the theme we're trying to do, or like maybe we should. I felt like I should be doing this instead of this, and there's been a lot of iteration in that regard too.
Oh yeah.
And Ro also asks, you talked about the card Sunken Outpost, the one that gets water counters on it to show how far it is sunk into the swamp. My question is related to that card, but involves timekeeping in general. Is the initial amount of tokens on a newly discovered card affected by the time the card is discovered? Is there, for instance, a chance that we find the swamp outpost very late and we actually never find it because it is already completely sunk at the time the Rangers would encounter it?
This is another question I really liked.
Yeah.
I think this is cool, and also speaks to some of the way the system is working that I don't think we've talked much about. So the Sunken Outpost specifically in the example does not do this. It just kind of is flooding and draining all the time. And so when you go there, it kind of has this flooding and sinking mechanic as the swamp kind of takes it over. However, there are parts of the valley that are beholden to what day you are throughout your campaign and how far through your campaign you are. How much do we want to spoil, Andrew? Do we want to talk about what that is, or do we want to leave it?
I think if you could talk about it in a very vague way.
There are
events. There are certain events.
Moments. Some certain events in the valley that if you visit a certain place at a certain time, that place will be different because of that event. There's not a ton of these. They're kind of something we were playing around with, but we're definitely kind of playing in that space with a few things that I won't spoil too much here, but you'll have to keep an eye out for it. And I think you'll have fun with it when you find it.
Yeah, I love this too. Like just this, which I think is something we're trying to capture as best we can within the limitations of a page count in the campaign guide. Really, ultimately, what it comes down to, and it's just time for development. But I really love the idea of a world that is living regardless of how the players affect it. Like the world would go on and do things. And it's something that I really like that idea, and it really kind of caught hold with me as I was reading Dungeon World. If you're familiar with that role-playing game, I really think maybe like 2 years ago, I was reading the Dungeon World rulebook. I haven't played it. I love, like I've said many times, I love just reading role-playing systems. Don't really get to play them very much, but I really enjoy reading them. And I really enjoyed Dungeon World. If you like role-playing games, I really highly recommend that you check it out. But one of the things they really talk about in that game is to imagine your story as having a life of its own, and imagining what would happen if the PCs did nothing. And where we can, we're definitely bringing some of that philosophy over into Earthborne Rangers, so that the world feels alive and feels like you need to participate, or you could choose not to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just on the feeling alive thing, that's something we've been working on just this week, is adding more reactivity to like all our various missions, to make sure that the people you might stumble across while you're on the mission actually kind of know the mission is going on and react thematically appropriately. And to Andrew's point about word count, it's a hard challenge because, we only have so many pages in our campaign guide, only so much material, and only so much time in the day to actually write all the different things we want to write. And so we kind of have to make these hard decisions about, like, where do we want the world to be reactive, and where can it just kind of stay static. And we kind of have to make choices about which pieces of reactivity and interactivity with the world get us the biggest returns. And so that's been an interesting problem.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that too, like something that we were playing around with early on in development was this idea that when you do things in the world, it would change a card. Like in the Sunken Outpost example, we had something kind of similar where there was a bridge that you could cross. The bridge is still in the game, but the mechanics are different now. But the way it worked in the original version of the design is, as you're walking across it, the bridge is slowly decaying, and if while you're there, the bridge breaks and falls. Then going forward, the next time you went, the next time you went back into that location, the bridge would no longer be there, so you'd have to find a different way around. But I think, Fisher, when you and I were talking about this, we really wanted to not go too far in having people like manage their card sets too much, because there's a lot of memory issues around that, and we wanted to make sure that people had an easy way of tracking that. So you do have a little bit of that in the core set, but it's definitely scaled down to a very manageable level where you're not going to be customizing every deck and having to remember every little thing you did everywhere every time you set up the game.
Yeah, we kind of made a choice about how we were going to be tracking, and a lot of our tracking is done through either storing your Ranger decks or recording on your campaign tracker. And this enables your core set to be used in multiple different campaigns at the same time pretty easily. We could have taken an approach where, you're customizing and changing sets, and then your organization of the box is really important to kind of the save state of your valley. But it really limits the usefulness of your core set in sharing the game with other people, playing a one-off session. We could have taken a legacy approach of having you permanently modify the game, but that kind of clashed with our goal of like sustainability. Part of like sustainable use is reuse, right? We want this game to be playable and replayable, and we don't want to like destroy it and have it be a one-time use game. And so we didn't want to take that approach. And so we kind of settled on this approach of tracking through the sheet to make your core set as universally useful and reusable as possible.
Mm-hmm.
That actually makes me wonder about when people have their hands on the game and they're playing it, will there be people who maybe just play the game to see how quickly they can master it, and then maybe we'll do speed runs of it the best way? And
I hope so.
Would you be interested in seeing that on YouTube, and would it be informative of future designs?
We were just talking about our hypothetical speed run. What was it? How fast we could get down to the swamp, Andrew?
Yeah. Because there's well, I'll just put it out there. If anyone wants to try to sequence break the game, there will be a way to do it, but it'd be really, really hard to do. But I think that's maybe in the spirit of a speed run.
I love that.
Because you can like glitch through walls and do like a video game speed run. You can like glitch through walls and do stuff.
Yeah, I love watching that. Yeah.
I think it'd be really hard though. I don't know if you could actually do it.
Oh, I'm sure somebody could. Players always astound me with how good they are at finding tricks and stuff. But we chose to, speaking of choosing where to put your word count, we left that sequence break in the game because it is just not probable or feasible to achieve.
What is the win state of the game? Can we reveal that? Like, what is the wins? Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually a question during the Kickstarter. Andrew, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I made an entire, because when I launched the Kickstarter in the video, so if you like watch the intro, the Kickstarter video on our YouTube channel or on the Kickstarter page, one of the things I said in the video is that you can't win or lose a campaign of Earthborne Rangers. It just keeps going. And that was a kind of a big contentious thing at the beginning of the Kickstarter. People were like, well, it's just a storytelling game. Then I was like, well, wait a minute. Okay. It didn't mean there's no bad outcomes. And only that you don't get a game over screen. So winning, you'll complete the campaign. and it will have an ending. Whether you felt like you won, that's up to you. I would hope that for all the Stormlight Archive fans out there, that the journey before destination, that you enjoyed your time with the game, and where you ended up is less important than the fun you had along the way. But
what's the end campaign then? What does that look like?
Well, I don't want to spoil that.
Okay.
But
okay.
There's
the end of a movie or something.
Yeah. Well, there's multiple outcomes based on your choices. I think we've said before there's 3 alternate endings to the main campaign.
Yeah, there's 3 finales.
Oh,
and
right.
Then there's
4.
And then there's how you do at those finales. So
right.
Even within those different finales, you can have different outcomes. So I'd say there's probably 6 meaningfully distinct ways the game can end. The main story can end.
Yeah. But then after that, you can continue playing regardless of how it ends. And 100% the game. And that might be winning to some people. I did everything.
Right. That is,
100%.
There's a very incredible reward card if you 100% the game. So.
That's true. Which you'll be able to carry, which people might say, oh, well, what's the use of it then if I 100% the game? But then you'll be able to carry that over into the campaign expansion.
Yeah.
Oh,
cool.
Awesome stuff. All right, we have one more question from Caravan. They ask via Discord, in the vertical slice, we received a better outcome for completing the main mission faster. In the full game, will it be clear when there will be time pressure and when we're free to explore the valley at our own pace? Well,
yeah.
All right, that leads us to work stories.
I was, we have not arranged who's going to answer these questions, so I was waiting to see if Andrew was going to jump in. But
you got it.
Yes, and that's actually something we're still working on. I think that there are some places where our campaign guide could be clearer on which things have timers and which things don't, but that's one of the things we're working on here later in development, is kind of cleaning up the campaign guide and making sure that experience is getting all the, striking the right balance of flavor and information and everything. So it's something we're continuing to work on, but we very much intend for it to be clear when you have distinct timers. Some of them are very clear and mechanical. There'll be a thing on the board and you're like, oh, I see when this is ticking down. But some of them are a little more nebulous, where something will happen in a few days and you're not entirely sure. And so those instances are the ones where we're still trying to kind of finesse the language to make sure players understand what might happen a few days from now.
Yeah, and I would say even when there is time pressure, you always have the option to ignore the main mission. So it's really hard. I can't do that. Like I feel like whenever I'm playing an RPG and there's a something that's important that must be done, I very much get into the story and follow along. And when the NPCs say, "Hey, this is important," I go, "Okay, yes, I agree with you," and then I go do it. But I think for something like maybe a second playthrough, or if you're just someone who likes to be contrarian to RPG stories, or if you're someone who enjoys the side quests of Skyrim more than the main quest, you're like, forget it. That's not necessarily a direct analogy, because Skyrim will wait for you forever to get back to the main story. Then you might enjoy ignoring the campaign and just exploring the valley to your heart's content and watch everything happen around you. That's always an option.
The valley will move on without you.
It will.
It certainly will.
Cool. Well, thanks for everyone's questions. We had some great ones tonight. And that brings us to everyone's favorite segment, work stories.
Yeah.
And we'll start.
That sounded a little too grim, didn't it? Like, work stories.
Oh yeah. My favorite. Here we go. Evan, you wanna take the floor for a little bit?
Okay. Yeah, it's not much different to report as last time. Still working on art. Although with the lion's share of a lot of the character art and stuff having wrapped up, I've had more time to work on my own art contributions for the game, so that's pretty cool. Mm. I'm remaining cautiously optimistic that I can complete 3 pieces a week, and I've already completed 2 this week, and it's only Tuesday. So,
nice.
Wow, it is only Tuesday, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
there's also a bunch of emails that I have to respond to tomorrow, so I think tomorrow's shot. But yeah, so it's coming along, and I did just finish a cool reward card that I guess I can't talk about.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I was just going to say, do you want to try to share that? I think we should share that because that's very cool.
Oh, the one, even
if it's a reward card. Yeah, I think it's awesome. Maybe hide the name, but we could show the card.
Okay, so it's. Oh, you want me to bring it up?
Screen share it.
Let's show it.
Okay.
Hang on.
It's been a while since we've shared our screens.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at something.
I just moved it into the shared art folder without the card framing.
I don't even know what this is.
It's very cool. It's very cool.
You know what? I gotta wait for Photoshop to open up because it's not a it's not a JPEG that I can just preview. Otherwise, it'll have the card framing giveaway. Shoot,
that's top secret stuff.
I mean, I could just share it a little bit later.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Let us know when it's up.
We could we're teasing it. We could
just interrupt anything that's happening. Just say, "Hey, it's ready."
All right.
Let's.
Cool.
Is it ready?
No.
It takes a long time to open Photoshop.
I'll cut in.
Let's talk.
It's reticulating splines right now.
It's a SimCity 2000 reference.
Heck yeah.
Let's talk to Fisher then while we're waiting, huh?
Yeah. It's been busy. I don't know if it's just because we were updated our timeline to shipping recently, but I feel like a lot of stuff. I also think it's we got done with card councils and started working with the partners, and so everything's moving. I felt like juggling a million plates this week, but we got all of our scripts updated with new card templates, which is exciting. Some people may have seen previews of those on some of our foreign language cards, but got those all updated and updated our tabletop simulator environment to hopefully show off some demos of the game at some point. So a lot of behind the scenes updating. For a while, when I was updating those scripts, I was questioning, in hour 6 of debugging crap in the scripting language. I was like, is this worth it? Have we made a huge mistake doing all this automation? And I'm like, should I have just laid this out by hand? And then today, one of our card files is a card type that we don't have enough of to warrant the scripting. And so it's done by hand. And I had to update all of those cards. And after that work, I can safely say that we are not wasting our time.
Good. Good.
I'm so done with updating these cards by hand.
Cool. I always wondered how that worked at FFG. Although FFG had some sort of system, right?
It had the card database.
Did it? Yeah. So
I'd love to have if we could have a card database, that'd be awesome. But that I know how long it took to make that card database and how it's still, at least when I left, it was still, more or less I would consider to be in a beta state. But it was very, very handy.
And we had actual software developers working on that thing, whereas most of the scripting has been done by me and Evan, which I have a comp.
You have a degree.
I have comp sci experience, but I had to dust the cobwebs off of it.
God, I'm so glad you have those skills. Oh my God.
But anyway, so most of that's updating, and then like we alluded to earlier, we're touching up the campaign guide and the missions and getting that that kind of storytelling experience. We've done a lot of play testing on a lot of the mechanics of the game, but there's still some kind of polish to be done to make sure that story is coming across right. And so that's what we're kind of focusing on next on the development side of things. And that's about it for me.
I can cut in with that piece of art.
All right.
Sorry to cut you off so abruptly.
So to go full screen, you're going to press...
Yeah, what is the full screen
Command... What is it? Do you guys know? Full screen on Photoshop?
I had it last
Command
time.
F?
I think it's Command F, yeah.
I'm just guessing.
Nope.
Control, Function, Shift, Alt.
No.
Oh, no.
That should be the easiest.
Okay, I think I figured it out. I'll just share the screen. It's great audio.
Oh, just
press F. Just press F, yeah.
Oh, you don't even have to...
Yeah, just
We're
F.
professionals, everyone.
Just F it, man.
There it is.
Oh, this one. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a item or a piece of gear.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah. So it was another piece based off of one of Joe's sketches. So all I did was just sort of frame the sketch in a visually pleasing way, at least in my opinion, in the card, how it would frame in the card art window. And then just started inking. I guess not inking really, but doing the line art and all the levels of detail on top of it. And yeah, so
for those of you listening on Spotify,
thank you.
You'll have to check it out on YouTube. But the art is in Evan's, awesome. Like I don't know how you do those lighting effects, Evan. Just like all the art on the Kickstarter, but the lighting on that looks fantastic. But it's a backlit hand holding this kind of dagger made out of some kind of claw with this really cool iridescent effect on it. Like, yeah, that looks awesome, Evan.
Yeah,
cool. Thank you.
Great.
Well done.
Joe's been crushing it on the sketches the last couple of weeks too. The last batch he turned in, that was part of it. So yeah, like you turned it around super fast because he sent that sketch to us on Sunday, and you're on Tuesday. It's finished piece of art already. Yeah,
wow,
it
was awesome.
It takes the pressure off me too, because I put a lot of. I never know if what I'm making, the concept is cool or other people like it. So if Joe just hands me a cool concept, all I have to do is make it look as cool as possible, and it's not as much of a burden, like a psychic burden to do that, I suppose.
Right, like you'd be more the inker and colorist on a comic book than the
that's a good
pencil.
analogy for sure.
That is your strong suit, though. I do like stuff that you invent from your mind as well.
Thanks.
Especially those hero guys.
Yeah, they're
awesome. Do you want to bounce back to Fisher's stuff? Did you say it?
Oh, I'm good. We can go to Andrew.
Andrew,
Hi.
what are you doing at the HQ?
Well,
that means headquarters.
I was going to mention to Evan, like, just when you talking about inking, reminded me when Joe and I were in high school together, we made a comic book he made a comic book for an English class based on the Odyssey, and then we did additional pages to that comic together, and it was the same arrangement. Like he would do all the pencils, and I would just do all the inking. It was super fun.
Awesome.
What was your comic book publisher name? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Probably your two initials, AJ.
Yeah, I did do a series of comic book covers in middle school, like where I was imagining these long story arcs of superheroes and various things, and I had a whole line. And I don't remember what my fake publishing name was. I'm sure it was something cool. I had to go back
really cool.
to my mom's house and dig through my old sketches to find those.
That'd be fun.
I did a few comic books like that too. Yeah,
just the covers or
mainly the covers.
Stuff?
I was more interested in doing the covers. Yeah.
Yeah,
Same.
the one that comes to mind the most is I had I really was fascinated by the character Dak from Empire Strikes Back, Luke's gunner.
Oh yeah.
I loved his
little action figure of him. Yeah,
I loved his name, like just Dak. It was so cool.
Dak. What's his last name? No last name.
I have no idea. Rendar. Oh,
that sounds right. Yeah,
that's Dash.
Dak Katarn.
Yeah. But I had this. I made this story where Dak did not die when the AT-AT stepped on him, but instead was stranded on Hoth. and then continued to fight the rebellion. Continued to fight for the rebellion on his own against the Empire. Became kind of this like badass secret agent kind of guy.
I think you need to talk to Disney
But his face
Plus.
was completely flat, though.
Well, it was great because of my drawing skills at the time. Like I was pretty good at drawing figures, but not so good at like drawing consistent faces. So I just had him with the scarf over his face and then the goggles.
Yeah,
he was just wearing the Hoth.
So he's
rebel
like
gear.
a mysterious ranger, Lone Ranger type.
Yeah, exactly. So I had a series of covers of that, and I did some interior pages where he was like planting bombs and escaping on gliders and stuff. That was
Dak
cool.
Ralter. Dak Ralter.
Ralter?
Yeah,
that's no good.
that's what it is. Dak Ralter.
I object.
He was so enthusiastic to jump into that airspeeder with Luke, and
he
what happened.
He was feeling good.
Yeah, so he's a human.
He felt like he could take on the entire Empire by himself.
Yeah, I know.
if anybody is curious,
ultimately in my story.
Yeah.
If anybody is curious about the naming scheme of characters in the Valley, just look to Andrew's love of Star Wars names.
Yep, they're very Star Wars. Like Ren Kobo.
Ren Kobo is such a Star Wars name.
It was very Star Wars.
That's an Earthborne name?
Yeah.
Ren Kobo is so Star Wars.
The approach that I've taken to naming characters in Earthborne is we start out with like a longer name, and then I just chop off combinations of letters until there are only a few left, and then that's the name. Until I find a pleasing combination and a nice rhythm to the name.
What was Ren Kobo? Renaldo?
I forget what it was. Some of them, like Quizzy Voss, for example, that's another pretty good Star Wars name.
Quizzy Voss kind of sounds like your own thing, though, too.
That's exactly. A good one. It's very inspired by the Star Wars naming conventions. But Quizzy Voss originally was a non-named character just called Inquisitive Youth. And then I took the letters from Inquisitive Youth and then chopped them off until it became Quizzy Voss.
It's like one of those Mad Magazine things you fold the page together and it makes a new thing.
Yeah, I loved those.
Yep, exactly. Well, I haven't been doing any of that these past couple of weeks. Well, like Fisher said, we finished Card Council. That was that last week? 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Last Tuesday. Yep.
Yeah. It feels like an eternity ago at this point because that was just our life for a couple weeks.
Yeah, it was.
But then after that, I've kind of gone back into business land and have been getting more quotes. I've been talking to some potential fulfillment partners, getting more quotes, and also getting some updated quotes on some of the manufacturing for add-ons. And man, I tell you what, like I've never really dealt with any transactions as expensive as these. It's just, you look at those numbers, it's like, oh my God, I'm so glad that our Kickstarter went well.
Yes.
It's very expensive. It's so expensive.
Wow.
I did get an updated quote on the art book. I think we'll be getting some more quotes as well, but the update quote from the last one I got, which was effectively right before the Kickstarter, it's gone up 50%. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot more. I looked at the numbers. I was like, "Oh, that's not so bad." But then I went back and looked at the original quote. I was like, "Oh, wow, yeah, that went up a lot."
How many games are you making? Is that something you talk about? How many are you initially?
Yeah, I mean,
running.
I'm not 100% sure yet. I think we'll print as many as we can afford to print, so that we can continue to sell them. Obviously,
yeah,
because I feel like, you know, we got a lot of really great support from Kickstarter backers, and we have a lot of people who are excited to, you know, come in and effectively late pledge for the game. But I really feel like, you know, once this game hits the table and people see it, start playing it, start talking about it, that there's going to be a lot of interest. So I want to make sure that we have enough copies on hand to, you know, take advantage of that. So I don't want to like, oh yeah, I'm really excited for this game. Like, sorry, we don't have any copies. Like I want to make sure to have a decent amount on hand. So I'm not 100% certain on what the final quantity will be, but it will be definitely over the amount that we had backed. And obviously that's a luxury that we have from having a couple foreign partners on board, and also having a successful Kickstarter. So that makes that possible for us, which is great. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure yet. Like I said, as much as we can afford to do. But that's what I've been doing. I'm looking forward to getting into the campaign guide, which is what I want to be doing this week, and hopefully I'll be able to get into that tomorrow.
Nice.
I feel like I'm mostly caught up on emails.
Fun stuff.
So we'll switch for tomorrow, Evan. You can do emails, and I will ignore emails.
Yeah.
Enjoy your job. Yeah.
Oh, emails.
Does anybody know how they generate names for Star Wars? Is there like a convention that they use, or
George Lucas?
No, yeah,
just George Lucas.
Yeah, George Lucas, obviously. Yeah.
And what's your favorite Star Wars
name?
I
mean, it's just fucking amazing names. Han
What's
Solo,
your favorite one?
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Mace
I'm trying to think
Windu.
of my favorite one.
Great names.
Was
Jar
it
Jar
Mace
Binks?
Windu used to be called Mace Windy, I think.
Well, that's
Way
a good
really?
thing they changed that.
Yeah.
Windu.
Pretty sure. Yeah.
Yoda.
Classic. Great one. Lando Calrissian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, that's a great last name.
Beautiful name. Lando.
And only Billy
right.
D. Williams, I think, could really merit such a glorious name.
It suits him.
Wait, what's
all
the little
names.
guy in Jabba's palace?
Salacious Crumb.
Salacious P. Crumb. Yeah. How about that one? That's a great
Salacious
one.
Crumb?
Did he have a middle initial? Was it Salacious P. Crumb?
B. I thought it was B.
B. Crumb?
Maybe I just added that. I don't know.
It suits him.
Yeah.
And what is a hut? What is a hut?
What is a
Jabba's-
hut?
It's a member of
Is that a real
Slug
thing?
Man.
Yeah.
Jabba the Hutt. He's a hut.
There are there are
man.
many huts. Well, yeah, I wonder at the time if there were. Well, when he was originally written, I think hut was maybe just an honorific, because he was the kind of large man in a fur vest that just kind of hassled Han Solo in the hangar in the deleted scene.
Yeah.
So he wasn't a monster originally, but I think maybe that was the original vision of it. He was going to be this big, some kind of something, but they didn't have the budget for it. I could be making that up.
How about Jack Porkins? Do you guys remember that guy?
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah.
Everyone remembers Porkins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
he's got a
especially
cult
us,
following.
since he was an X-wing pilot, and we FFG produced X-wing, which is one of my favorite miniature games ever.
It was a very good game.
I'm looking
It was
at
a lot of fun.
How about Droopy McCool? Droopy McCool.
Yeah, that's he's the little elephant man, right? Who plays the
he's
piano in
playing
Jabba's palace.
He's
That's
playing
his
like
Oh,
name?
is he playing?
Droopy
That's right. He's
No,
playing
the
like an
elephant
oboe
is
thing.
yeah. Oh, we're being yelled at right now. People are listening.
Well, Droopy McCool was the stage name of Snit, who was the lead horn player in the Max Rebo band at Jabba's Palace.
Max Rebo's the
Don't
guy.
you know
That's
that?
the
That's
thing.
Yeah, Max
the
Rebo's the
blue.
little elephant man, and
Yep.
yeah, Droopy McCool, plays the oboe thing.
Droopy McCool looks very much like a Muppet. Big nose.
Oh, half of
Look him
Jabba's
up.
palace looks like a Muppet.
They're all done by Jim Henson, weren't they? I'm
Were they?
pretty sure.
It would make sense. All right, I'll get off this page. None of these names are shocking you guys. You're just like, yeah, of course. That's a great name. Let's talk about our number 3 most influential game of all time.
All right.
And
Before we jump in,
Yeah.
I have to say that this segment has inspired the fan Discord server to start listing their 5 most influential games.
Nice.
So-
that's fun.
People who haven't gone over there should go over there and check it out and join the discussion. I
really
think
cool.
it's slightly devolved into discussion of Dominion, which showed up on a few people's lists. But yeah,
That's cool. I bet I want to look at that. We'll start with me, I guess, because that's what we've been doing. And I haven't thought about this one much, but it just popped into my head today. It's a game I played a ton when I was probably in my mid early to mid 20s. It's probably the only non-video game I'm going to choose. No, it's not a video game. It's called Super Checks. Do you guys know what that is, just based on the name?
No.
I've eaten the breakfast cereal Chex.
Yeah.
Super Check.
I had some Chex earlier today.
Oh, dang. Well, you'd love this game then. No, it's Chex with 2 X's. It's that hockey game you see at bars and arcades. It's
like
that
bubble hockey?
Bubble hockey?
Yeah, in the dome.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Why do I love that game?
The visuals.
Because
sorry.
It's I'm really, really into dexterity games and the physicality of it. So things like ping pong and air hockey and I don't know, bowling, anything like that. I'm really, really drawn to, and I feel like I played that game more than any of those other games I just mentioned. Me and my friends would go to this bar in Roseville, and we didn't even drink. We just played Super Checks for hours. And it was so much fun, and the game is perfect. It just works when it works. It's often, there's often like a few players that are a little bit loosey-goosey, but if all the players are working, I don't know, over time you develop this muscle memory, and there's a surprising amount of control you can have over these weird hockey players that can slide on this track and spin 360. It's kind of like foosball, I guess. But man,
I was going to ask if
amazing
foosball skills translated, but it sounds like, all those guys are on one bar and they can only flip. This sounds far more.
It's really similar. It's really similar. So you've got, I think maybe, so the goalie just has a little knob and it can slide back and forth in front of the goal like this. And then there's, I think, maybe 4 or 5 other
four
players.
Others, it looks like. From
4
Google.
others. Some of them have longer sticks, but there's nowhere on the board where you can't reach the puck, and you can just wing the puck, or you can really get it into your possession and then kind of slide it up towards the goal, and the other person knows it's coming, and you can, take your shot in like a spot where they can't reach you, they can't stop you, so you just kind of have to play goalie, and it's kind of like a shootout kind of thing. Anyway, it's a really fun game. It's a game that I connected with my friends about for many years, and it just has like a special place in my heart as one of my favorite games. So that's mine.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was always very intensely competitive in air hockey.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my favorite.
Me too.
Like site-based games. Did you call it site-based games? Wherever you have to go to a place and play it. Like it's not.
Oh, site-TE. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I love site-based games. Yeah.
I don't know if that's a term. I may have just made that up right now.
But it makes sense. Yeah, games that you don't typically have in your home. Though I was looking at how much these cost, and they're like $7,000.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked by the price on these Super Check tables.
Yeah, I'll go pay a few quarters now and then. I've got to find where they have one of these new ones. I just read on the Wikipedia they started producing like new Super Checks Pros, which I've never tried. So
I think for me,
there's
some strange allure to the fact that it was contained within a bubble. It was it's almost like it was a priceless. It was like in a museum,
Right.
And if you lifted up the dome, an alarm would go off, and the security guards would come after you or something.
Right? Yeah. It does have that look.
Was there like a light?
Super Checks.
A light on the inside of the dome too?
Like there's a light on the top with the scoreboard, and it looks like a hockey arena.
So neat. Yeah.
It's really fun. It's one of those games where you, as a child, you might have put a quarter in there and just, spun it around and like crazy. But then when I, was older, I realized there's a lot of skill involved, and it's really, really, gets your blood pumping, the neck and neck nature of it.
Yeah.
Go play it. Let's move on to Evan's number 3.
Well, first of all, I want to apologize for my lighting. I did have a lamp right here, but we took it out and put it in another room, so it's kind of getting dark.
It's getting moody in there.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I want to tell a quick story that I had been meaning to tell ever since our first, when Anders, you mentioned your 5th favorite or most influential was Super Mario Brothers. I have a quick story about that. Back when I was about 11 or so, my brother and I got home from school. My parents were still at work, and I was just unwinding, probably going to watch TV or something. And my brother burst in and he said that the car was on fire in the garage. And I looked, and sure enough, the car was on fire. And I think he called 911, and we went to the neighbor's house. And in that time, another neighbor backed the car out. The fire engine showed up and was putting it out. My parents showed up, and I was sitting there, and I saw Nintendo in my neighbor's living room, and that was my priority. And I asked him if I could play Nintendo. So I played Super Mario Brothers while our car was on fire. So
that's a good story.
I forgot to tell that last time, but
that's amazing.
Thanks, I love it.
You got your priorities in the right place.
Yeah,
yeah.
But my number 3 is that's right. We're on number 3, right?
We are
3.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Mega Man series. So that spans several consoles, but that's always been a favorite of mine. Ever since I used to sleep over at a friend's house, on the Saturdays or whatever, and he had all the toys. He had Nintendo and Super Nintendo, and the only thing is he was kind of a game hog, and I was relegated to the position where I just would watch him play video games. But he slept in, so in the morning when he was sleeping, I always woke up early, and I would get up early and I would play Mega Man 4, and I think maybe it was the early feeling of getting away with that or something. I don't know. Was exciting, but ever since then, I've always been a huge fan of the series, and I loved the mechanics, and I loved how even your costume would change, the color combo of your little player would change when you get new abilities from defeating bosses. So yeah, and I still really enjoy Mega Man, and I have these several books. I think I got them at the Source, comic books and games.
Are those like manga? Or?
They're basically collections of all like the bad guys and stuff, and
all the different character designs.
Yeah, it's like lore.
Yeah, and there's a lore section, and then there's just gameplay tips and
dude, that's like Hero Guys right there.
Yeah,
that those kind of books would be my jam as a kid. Just pictures of the guys.
Yep,
with the stats next to it. Ooh.
And the designs are just so cool, and I loved how the robot masters or whatever they're called were always user or fan submitted ever since the second game. I think
really?
Little kids would just write in with ideas, and they would choose the best ones. So
that's why
that makes a lot of sense.
Spread. You'd get like Dust Man, Pharaoh Man, and I don't know. I might be corrected on this, but I'm pretty sure that's how it went down. I think it was fan submitted.
That's cool.
All right, Evan, which one in the series is your favorite? You mentioned 4 being kind of a formative experience, but which is your favorite of the series?
It would be Mega Man 3 for sure. Okay. Because it introduces a cool mechanic. You can slide in Mega Man 3. It also introduces Mega Man's brother, Proto Man, as like a secret character that you learn about at the end when you beat it. Has killer music, super cool music, cool enemy weapons that you can acquire, and it's the introduction of the sidekick dog Roll. No, not Roll. Oh my gosh, Rush. Sorry. Yeah. So there's a lot of reasons why 3 is my favorite for sure.
So, have you, speaking of Proto Man, have you heard of the band The Proto Men?
I don't know. I don't think so. It sounds kind of familiar, but I don't know.
They sing Mega Man themed rock opera.
Really?
Wow. They're awesome.
Okay. Actually, if you look in the corner up here, that's a Proto Man snapped together model right there. You might be able to see the shield and the helmet, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Cool. I never never played 3. I played 1 and 2 as a kid, and then X.
Oh,
Yeah,
X is great.
I'm playing X right now.
I remember it being very difficult.
1 is the worst, and it has the worst box art. Sure.
Or the best.
At least in the US. Or the best. But yeah. X is really cool.
Yeah, X is what I have nostalgia for because it was the one I had for Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I think I still have that in the basement somewhere.
I'm looking at
James
a fandom.
Niffen is also. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm looking at a fandom page right now that it lists every boss and the person who submitted the thing to the contest, and it says what they named them versus what they ended up calling them. For instance, there's like Ninja Man was the submission, but then they called him Shadow Man.
Shadow Man.
Yeah. So yeah, that's true. Number 2 through 8.
Cool.
Were fan submitted by Japanese fans.
That's awesome.
There you go.
Yep. I was going to say real quick, James Niffen of FFG. I don't know if he still works there or not, but he is a big Mega Man fan, and we would talk on the chat service that FFG had nonstop about Mega Man stuff. And I'd always pitch him my LCG ideas or board game ideas, and he was nice enough to humor me and say, "Oh, that's interesting." Yeah.
Yeah, he was sequentially playing through. He got them all on emulator and was sequentially playing through every single one, which I respect because like they're hard.
Mm-hmm.
They're hard games. I only had to struggle through them quite a bit.
And you have to kind of know the order in which to beat them,
unless
right?
you're James, because James would play through with just the regular default weapon, the Mega Buster.
What?
He didn't even use the boss powers?
That was a special challenge that he laid out
that's
for himself.
right.
It's such a nightmare to try to play through the game like that.
That sounds impossible.
Plus, you lose a lot of the satisfaction of one-shotting some of the bosses, like Woodman. If you hit him with the atomic fire weapon, he just goes away instantly.
That's cool.
It's so satisfying. Just bam.
Yeah, that's the only way I could play those is once you learn the sequence, to do it in that sequence, or otherwise it was just too frustrating for me.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Man, I'm fascinated by this contest thing. There's it says there was, hundreds of thousands of submissions, and then there's this one in Mega Man 5 where the submission was Beat Man. Do you know who that would be?
Yeah.
No, it's not a bird. It ended
Like a
up being
vegetable?
called Beat, like BEAT.
Oh, like
okay.
They're
There's Beat. There's Beat the Bird because all the characters are named after music. Mega Man is originally Rockman, and Proto Man is blues. Beat is a bird.
But this one is Beat actually ended up being called Napalm Man. Do you know who that is? They're like, you win, Beat Man, but we're gonna change it to Napalm Man. All right.
I don't think they quite captured the spirit of Beat Man with that name. I don't know.
Yeah, probably not.
Beat, yeah.
Firebomb Man.
All right, cool. All right, great pick, Evan.
Thanks.
Mega Man's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Fisher, what's your number 3?
Yeah. So my number 3 is a role-playing game called Fiasco. I'm sure plenty of people out there have played it, but I'm also kind of cheating with this pick because I'm going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons as well. Because if I'm being honest with myself in just trying to quantify the amount of impact a game has had on my life, I think Dungeons and Dragons probably beats Fiasco. I've played a ton of Dungeons and Dragons, as have a lot of role players. I got started with 2nd edition when I was really young. My friend's dad, actually the same friend's dad who introduced me to Acquire, my number 5 pick for most influential game, also ran our first Dungeons and Dragons session for us as kids. And then, I played 3rd edition, 3.5, 4th. I played every edition and ran more campaigns than I can possibly remember. So Dungeons and Dragons has had a really big impact on me. And it really informed how I think about role-playing games. But I also think that has obviously really informed how everybody thinks about role-playing games. A lot of role-playing games, and a lot of, like, you know, beyond D&D in high school, I played Shadowrun and Star Wars and World of Darkness games and, you know, etc. But a lot of these all kind of get their DNA from Dungeons and Dragons. And so while it's probably the most impactful, I chose Fiasco because I think Fiasco has had the greater impact on me, like time spent playing to impact on my design and how I think about role-playing games than Dungeons and Dragons has. Because I think Fiasco for me was the first moment that showed me that role-playing games could break out of that Dungeons and Dragons formula of these kind of characters and leveling up and abilities and everything, and showed it as this kind of collaborative storytelling experience. So for people who haven't played Fiasco, it's a really interesting system. There is no dungeon master like there might be in Dungeons and Dragons. Instead, you all come up with characters through this collaborative system where you're writing different things your characters have in common with each other and putting them on postcards between you and the person sitting next to you. And then so you end up with kind of this matrix of things your character cares about between you and the people next to you. And then you kind of come up with your characters and how they relate to each other based on these shared needs between each other. And the premise of the game is you're basically playing a Coen Brothers movie. You're all setting up these people who all want things. You're setting up this horrible house of cards of people who want these different conflicting things. And then you play it out and disaster ensues almost immediately. And usually half your characters end up dead or other horrible things happen to them throughout the course of the game. It's a Coen Brothers movie. And so you set up your characters by doing kind of this collaborative process. And then you each take turns playing out scenes, and people have kind of this currency they can spend to choose whether they think the scene has earned a good ending or a bad ending. And then other people will jump in to play the supporting characters in the scene. And it's kind of this group collaborative storytelling experience. It's really fun. And if you haven't played it, it's the perfect one-shot game. And I really do recommend it. But for me, the reason it is on my most influential game list is it really opened up my perspective on what RPGs can be. And I think I can see the impact of Fiasco, not only in the games I've played since then, because it's had an impact on the industry, and there's a lot of other games that kind of shake up the formula of what a role-playing game can be since then, but it's also impacted how I've designed. I worked on several different role-playing game lines, including the Star Wars RPG, the Warhammer 40,000 RPG, and a kind of apocalypse-themed RPG called End of the World. And we, in those games, worked in a lot of different kind of narrative mechanics. In the Star Wars RPG, the system later became called Genesis, without the Star Wars license. You have these destiny points that you can spend to get a mechanical bonus, but you can also spend to kind of retroactively alter facts and play around with it empowers the players to play around with the story in a way that traditionally the dungeon master hasn't been able to. And it's things like that, these kind of abilities that play around with how much control different members of the table have over the storytelling and kind of democratizing the storytelling to the players. That, I think, for me, is Fiasco's influence on how I'm thinking about role-playing games. So while D&D is probably my sheer time spent and formatting how my brain functions, D&D is probably more impactful. I think Fiasco earned the spot just because it changed how I think about it the most.
Awesome. Have you guys ever played that?
Yeah, I played.
I have not played. I've always wanted to, but I've never played. I've flipped through those books many times in the game store.
It was a really engaging and entertaining experience for me. And I'm a RPG player who isn't very good at improv, which is a great skill to bring to a role playing session. So I always marvel at people who just roll with that. But Fiasco really forces it out of you, and it's you're given these. I believe, Fisher, am I correct? You have bonds or relationships with some of the other players' characters. Like your character is like a relative or a friend or enemy inherently, and it just helps breed a cool like narrative.
Yeah, those kind of cards you put in between each other at the beginning of the game can be like a bond like that. A shared connection or a shared need. Like we both know about our secret family treasure buried under the old house, or we have a shared like possession. We both know where the leaky old stick of dynamite is, or whatever. So everybody gets like 2 of these connections, I think, between themselves and their neighbor. So you have 4 in total. And so everybody's kind of interrelated in this web.
Yeah. And it gives you like suggestions for each scenario the game presents you with, which like what I've seen, they have a bunch of supplements that essentially just put characters in different basic scenarios. Do they kind of give you prescribed ones, or are you encouraged to make up your own relationships from between the players?
Yeah, every setting has a bunch of different suggestions so that you kind of create a tableau that matches with that setting. But it does encourage you to, be creative. If an idea strikes the table and everybody thinks it's cool or funny, to feel free to change it. But you roll on these tables to generate this kind of randomized set of things that interrelate to you. And that the supplemental, like all the extra settings and scenarios they've made, and also tons of fans have made different like settings to imitate Coen Brothers movies, other movies, like just basically any setting you could possibly want to play in, somebody has made a Fiasco scenario for it. And it's one of my, I think it's my favorite possession that I ever got from the free table at FFG.
Oh wow.
The free table at FFG was just this table that people could bring in things they didn't want anymore and put it on the table, and then other people could take it. And it was slightly infamous because, if you kind of think about, if you extrapolate out, naturally that table just ends up with all the things that no one wants sitting on it forever. But on occasion you find a gem on the free table, and the gem I found was a binder. I should have brought it up. Evan, you had like show and tell prepared. I have a binder, and it is thick. It's like maybe 4 or 5 inches thick, filled with Fiasco scenarios that I actually believe Zach Table Thomas left on the free table.
Of course.
This is Evan's current dungeon master. I think he finally got like a nice printed version of all of them. So he had left his handcrafted binder of Fiasco scenarios on the free table.
Oh, wow.
And so I got that, and I have put it to good use.
Nice.
It's infinitely more valuable than a printed off thing. Like to see his notes and collation methods and stuff like that. That'd be great.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's been awesome. It's been very fun.
Awesome. Well, great pick, Fisher. Let's hear Andrew's number 3.
Yeah, so I'm continuing in my my chronological order.
Yes,
my number 3 is War Machine.
Yay!
Which is a miniatures game by Privateer Press.
Yeah,
that I really got into for a couple of years. I was pretty much obsessed with it from about, I think, 2005 through like 2007, where I spent pretty much all of my free time painting miniatures, building armies, and then playing every weekend. And this means a lot to me, is influential to me, because it was, I got into it when I first started working at FFG. And prior to working at FFG, miniatures games were just something which I think I mentioned last week when I was talking about Blood Bowl and how it has that really low barrier to entry, where to play it, you only need, like 12, 16 models to paint. So because of that, it was much more affordable. But I always aspired to play more majestic, full-on, tabletop games. So the only option that was really available for a long time, in the mainstream anyway, well, as mainstream as these get, was Warhammer 40K, Warhammer Fantasy. So I would look to those and be like, man, I wish I could play those games. Like Warhammer Fantasy in particular, I had this kind of wish list army built on a website app, or it was like a spreadsheet. It was in the early 2000s. So it was like, I think it was a spreadsheet you downloaded and you could plug in stuff into it. So I had like these kind of dream armies, and I'd look at that and be like, man, that is hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I cannot afford to buy this thing at all. Especially at the time, because I was mostly like, well, I was working at Starbucks for a long time, and then I was unemployed for a while. So like buying miniatures is not necessarily the top of the priority list, but I always wanted to play them. So when I started working at FFG, it kind of, and I think you guys can probably relate to this too, it opens up this whole other world of, well, I can just get things now. Because we can get them either through trade, which effectively is almost free, because we'd buy our own products and then trade them with other people at different publishers for the things that they wanted from us, and we get the things from them, and then it was just a great relationship. But also when I started at FFG, something that they got rid of after we grew to a certain size, but we were able to order from the Alliance distribution as employees. So we get, distributor prices. So essentially the same price that a retailer would pay for something that we could also buy, which is a lot cheaper. It's effectively like 50% off everything. So there was so I was kind of like eyeing War Machine a little bit at the source. It had a really cool look to it. Is art by Matt Wilson, who was one of my favorite, like early 2000s, like late 90s artists who worked with Wizards of the Coast. He did stuff for Dungeons and Dragons. I really loved his stuff. He did stuff for Magic the Gathering. And then he formed Privateer Press, and then was essentially the lead artist and designer for the setting, for the look of everything. And so his stuff had this really cool look to it, and I was really drawn to it. But then when I started working at FFG, another graphic designer there, a guy named Scott Nicely, award-winning graphic designer Scott Nicely, as he would like to be referred to. He played War Machine, and he would have he'd take time out during the day to like paint or assemble stuff at his desk. So I'd see some of the stuff he's working on there. I was like, oh, that's really cool. You in the War Machine? He's like, yeah. I was like, all right, cool. Well, screw it. I want to get in the miniatures game. I'll do it. So I just started ordering. I picked my faction, which was Cricks, which are these kind of like skeletal machine guys. They harvest souls and then use those souls to do certain effects. Maybe I should back it up. So War Machine is a tabletop miniatures game, in the vein of something like a Warhammer or Warhammer 40K, but much, I think, I'll just better designed at the time. It was a little bit more modern. Warhammer's been kind of more or less the same for many, many years. They've updated it with lots of different editions, but especially at the time, it was more of a game that was balanced, and you had a lot of ability to affect the outcome on the table. Warhammer's more about creating a cool spectacle and telling stories and just rolling dice and seeing what happens. War Machine is
interactive diorama, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way of putting it. And War Machine is more tactical. You had a lot of abilities to. You have a Warcaster, which is your main guy. I have a couple Warcasters up here who are always looking at my Lich Lord Asphyxius right here,
cool.
who I really like. And these guys just hang out with me here, look down at me every day. So we have this Warcasters, and then they have this cadre of machines, these war machines, the titular war machines that they can move around the board, and then they can cast their spells through them, and they can allocate points to them to do cool abilities and stuff, and you have certain points you can use every turn, and it has a really great rhythm to the game. And especially at the time, and then a couple years later, they released the version of the rulebook that I showed, which I think was probably the best time for the game. But I loved it. I really, really got into it. I loved the aesthetic. I loved the lore. I loved the story that they told, and I really enjoyed the people that I met when I was playing that game. And I met some great guys at this old store called Phoenix, which no longer exists, but I think became Tower Games. But I think ownership has changed since then, so I don't know if there is any connection to Phoenix anymore. But the guys I met the guys named Nick and Clint. Those guys were awesome. I also met Sam Gregor Stewart when he was just Sam Stewart. I met him through playing War Machine. I met Tim Flanders playing War Machine. Just a lot of great dudes, and that community was really awesome, and playing that at that store was great. But at the time that I was playing also, that's when I was, started work as a graphic designer at FFG, and I was getting like bigger and bigger projects, but I really wanted to be art director. Like I was putting a lot of my thought and intention into opportunities in art direction. And I was, talking to Christian, like, I really like to be art director, not really necessarily knowing what that meant. Mostly that I just really enjoyed working with artwork, and enjoyed working with artists. And I thought that would be really cool to help, guide the look of a game, which is something I was trying to do kind of covertly as a graphic designer. So I had a lot of thought and intention into that. And also, my wife became pregnant with our first kid in the fall of 2006, so like while I was playing this game. So in the midst of my deep love for the game and the setting and the artwork, I was on Privateer Press's website, and I saw that they were looking for an art director. So I was like, well, screw it. I'm gonna apply for this job. This is like essentially like the thing I was trying to manifest. Like it's art direction job with a game that I really, really love, and aesthetic that I really, really like. So why not go for it? So I applied for the job. Ended up interviewing over the phone with Matt Wilson, which at the time just really blew my mind. Just talking to Matt Wilson on the phone because I was such a huge fan of his work. And I ultimately ended up being offered the position. But, I was living in Wisconsin at the time and would have to like relocate to Seattle effectively, or Bellevue, I think is where they were. And we'd just moved into our house at the time. It was like our first house. My wife was pregnant. And we were talking a lot about it, and she acknowledged like, yeah, this would be like a really cool opportunity. Obviously, you're really excited about it. It's an art direction job. It's at this thing you really, really like. So I kind of took that as like a green light to accept the position. So I did. I accepted the position, and then immediately when we were talking, it was like, oh my God, what did I actually do? What did I do? We just bought a house. We're about to have our first baby. We'd be moving to a place where we knew nobody, had no support. The cost of living there is like very expensive. Yeah. So even though it would be a increase in pay, it would end up effectively being a wash. So after much soul searching and discussion, I remember being at a friend's house to play War Machine, and then going outside of the house to talk to Matt Wilson to tell him that I had to ultimately like turn down the job.
Oh man.
Oh. And I remember what he said. He's like, "Oh, I feel like you're breaking up with me before we can go to the prom." Like, yeah, I'm sorry, but it's just given our life situation right now, I don't think I can really do it. And it was a really significant moment for me for multiple reasons. At the time, I remember talking to my dad about it, and really I think it was the first decision that I ever made that wasn't just purely selfish as a young adult, where if I was untethered in any way, I'd be like, yeah, just go and do it. But really putting my family first, it felt like it was a major turning point in my life, where I felt like at this moment, it was the first time I felt like I made a decision like as an adult, and that really resonated with me and like really helped me feel good about the decision. But then obviously, just a few years later, I ended up becoming, art director at FFG. Things progressed. My career at FFG took a very fortuitous course, and obviously none of that would have happened if I'd taken that job at Privateer. And many years later, when I was I think first year I was back at Gen Con as like the head of studio at FFG, I talked to Matt Wilson and thanked him for that opportunity, and how much that meant to me. I don't really know him very well, so I think he was kind of taken aback by the sincerity, which I think I do to some people. Like I can be very real, even if I don't know you very well. So, but yeah, I told him how much that meant to me, and how much I appreciated the experience, even though we didn't end up working together. So that's why War Machine is on my list. It not only is a game that I really enjoyed, that I really got into, and I've even though I got an extreme discount on miniatures, I spent a lot of money on that game. But it meant a lot to me personally and in my professional life as well. So War Machine, my number 3.
That's awesome. Damn. That was a great little story and a big story. And I'm glad I'm not following you with my bubble hockey.
Yeah, I know.
No, I appreciate all the thought that goes in that. It's awesome. You're like telling a story with your with the games that have really influenced you. You're winning this so far, Andrew. So I'm trying to say.
I don't know about that.
Mega Man changes colors, and I like that.
Yeah, start it with the 2 dopes, and then go on to the. Awesome. All right, we're at almost towards the end of the show again, because we got so much to say about our favorite games, and let's do another brief one.
Yeah.
Brief what we're into. Okay, I'll go first. Bouncing balls. No, I gave that up. Life has really been the most what I've been doing most lately. Real life, so that sucks. But games, I got to play this game called Trek to Yomi. It's published by Devolver Digital, which I love a lot of their games. Mm-hmm. And Trek to Yomi is maybe the most cinematic video game I've ever played. It looks like a Kurosawa film, so it's black and white.
Oh, and cool!
And it's kind of like Resident Evil, where the first Resident Evil games, where it's just there's a static camera angle, and you kind of have to control the player within that. So every shot looks like a beautiful Akira Kurosawa, cinematography. I haven't played a lot of it yet, so I haven't really gotten into the meat of the game, but it's just absorbs you, and it's really, really cool. And it's on Xbox Game Pass if you have that. So that's kind of all I've really played.
Nice. That's cool. Have you played Ghost of Tsushima at all?
No, I don't have anything powerful enough to play that, really.
Yeah, it feels like...
So I'd love to.
They talked a lot in that game, about it being, very inspired by Kurosawa. But then I think part of the criticism of it when you actually played it is that it doesn't really frame up like Kurosawa films very well.
Yeah, it's more like a video game.
Yeah, so I wonder if this was made partially in reaction to that, or if
could be.
This was one of those things that was in development almost concurrently.
Right. I don't know. It looks great though. You just watch the trailer, you'll see.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it looks very cool.
And it's on Game Pass. How can I say no?
It is.
Exactly.
Check it out. I'm going to play more of it.
No need to say no.
I know. It's awesome.
I'll play more. We can talk about it next time, Fisher. Okay. Fisher, how about you?
Yeah. I talked a while back about being excited about my brand new Tyranid Codex, and then I got COVID and I didn't get to play my brand new Tyranid Codex. But I finally got them to the table this last weekend, and they're really good. It was one of those games where like you get to the end of it and you're happy you won, but you also kind of feel bad.
Yeah.
There's some good new units in there. I think they're a little undercosted. But it was a lot of fun. There's a couple fun new units that like there's one that like implants alien eggs in people's chests like you're in the movie Aliens. And so it was really fun to like swoop over people and plant eggs in them, and it makes them not be able to score objectives. And it was that was pretty cool.
Awesome.
That sounds very mean.
It was a little mean. I definitely swung one of the turns using the parasite of Mortex, the new model. Haven't been playing many video games. Been getting outside a lot just because of the beautiful weather. It's we have this brief window where it's nice out, but there aren't mosquitoes yet. So you got to use these few weeks before the mosquitoes come.
It's amazing outside right now here in Minnesota.
I went out to Taylor's Falls this weekend and went climbing. Our friends set up anchors, and we climbed on the cliffs out there, and that was a ton of fun. But I feel like I should probably show off what I did to myself there. Well, I was at the top of the cliff, and I swear I put my phone back in my backpack. And now that I say that, you all know where this is going. But I got over the edge, leaning back to rappel down, and our friend's at the bottom. I just hear her yell, "Phone!" And for some reason in my head, I was like, "Oh well, my phone's safe in my backpack." So poor Emily must have dropped her phone. I feel so bad for her. And then I hear this like sickening crunch, and I feel like I'm one of the few people who can say that they've literally dropped their phone down a cliff. But
does it still work?
It still function? I think
it does. It does actually still work.
Wow.
So you can see it's kind of it's not doing great. It's kind of flickering.
It's not bad though, considering.
I called up cell phone repair shop, and they want basically as much as the phone costs to fix it. So
damn,
it's totaled. But otherwise, the climbing was beautiful. The weather was awesome, and we found a nice piece of slab that like had like a big skill range on it, so everybody could kind of like get a climb that challenged them. So that was a ton of fun.
Cool. Were you on the Minnesota side?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We went to Keyhole. If anybody knows Taylor's Falls sites.
I only know the Wisconsin side. I always watch people rappelling down on the Minnesota side from the Wisconsin side.
Yeah, we could see some people over there, and then the ferry comes through the middle, the ferry tours, and then like you're on the wall struggling with some move, and you hear a bunch of people like gawking at you, like, "Oh, look at the guy on the wall."
I love rock climbing there, but I just what do you call it when you don't use ropes or anything? You just kind of
bouldering.
Oh, bouldering.
Bouldering. Yeah. I love bouldering there. Just learned that term right now. I've been doing it for years. All right, Evan, your turn.
Yeah, I haven't been really getting outside or playing games. I guess the most outside time I've been getting lately is trying to seed some of the grass in the backyard, which I don't know how to do, and I keep forgetting, and I watch a YouTube video, and I think I'm doing it right. But more importantly, I'm getting ready to be a father, so Megan and I are getting the room all prepped with things to anticipate the newborn coming in July or early July, possibly late June.
Soon.
So, yeah.
So exciting.
I know. It's intense. And I really appreciate that video you sent me, Anders, of your child hysterically
I forgot
crying.
about that. That's funny.
Get ready for it.
I don't think you watched. Like when you first told me that you were going to have a child,
I
think I just like launched into telling you how shitty it is at first.
We texted for a while. Yeah.
just so you'd know what to expect a little bit. Because I think I found that people don't really warn you correctly. They say like, "Oh, it's hard, but it's worth it," and that's all they say. I found it to be extremely hard at first.
I've been getting all spectrums, and you were definitely on one end of the spectrum versus
all the way to the end.
Not all
everyone
the way to
lies. I think everyone's lying.
I
they
don't
forget.
Know, Anders.
People forget.
I don't know, Anders. I feel like I'm terrified to have a kid. And so like I definitely feel like everybody's fed me like having a kid is terrifying, but like I don't know. I hear from like Andrew has great things to say about having children.
Yeah, I mean it is challenging. It's challenging, but it's worth it.
Right.
I think a lot of it also just depends on your child, like their own temperament and their personality. Like, there is amnesia. Don't get me wrong. And so like, even when it's hard, Anders, like, don't worry. In a couple of years, you'll have forgotten everything.
Oh, I already have. Yeah.
I'm super forgetful. So I'm looking forward to that.
It'll be gone before you know it. But yeah, with my oldest, like he was pretty chill. But my youngest, man, he and I were like, from the beginning, like, we're super, we have very similar personalities. So we butt heads a lot, and that was true even when he could not speak. So yeah, he and I were just like, like even when he was, a couple months old. That was very, very challenging for me.
Yeah, those first couple months are rough.
Your youngest is a ball of charisma. We were working in Andrew's dining room one day, and he just comes over and just starts like asking about the game and talking about it, and I was like, we should have you selling this game. Like,
yeah,
he was so slick. Like,
yeah. Well, I think we've talked about that a lot. I think if he can come out to a convention, he'll definitely work the booth.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome.
He would sell copies. He sold me on the game.
I'll watch him and take notes.
Andrew, what have you been into?
I've been enjoying the weather as well. Lately, I've just felt because when we recorded the podcast 2 weeks ago, it was still cold. And I think almost immediately afterwards, then it warmed up. So I've just felt compelled to spend time outdoors, not even necessarily doing anything. I've been doing some like meditation outside, which has been really nice. And also helping Rachel with the garden. She has a extremely elaborate series of gardens in our yard and along our alley, which take a lot of work. She spends a lot of time out there in the warm months. So that's been fun.
Cool.
I've been still watching the NBA playoffs. There's a lot of basketball games. The NBA playoffs last forever. But those have been fun. I've really been enjoying it. I've no real stake in it, but I've really been enjoying Luka Doncic play. He's pretty amazing for all you basketball fans out there. And then I wasn't feeling great this weekend. So on Saturday I rested a lot and I booted up Skyrim.
Yes.
Played some Skyrim
wow.
on Saturday and spent many hours resting on the couch playing Skyrim. And that game's great. It's like comfort food. I think just going back to it, it's just so low impact and comfortable. It was just what I needed. So I was playing. I started a new character and went straight to the Mages Guild quest and was playing through that. And that was a lot of fun. My son purchased the 10th anniversary edition, so there's some new stuff in it. So I was playing in survival mode.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah,
that might be enough to get me back.
It's monitor more meters. You get cold, which kind of stinks, but is also just adds an element to that wasn't there before. So that makes it makes your clothing choices more strategic, which I thought was kind of cool. So like having a fur, like I never wore fur armor before, but now I'm wearing fur armor because it has the highest warmth rating. Never really bought food before or made food, but now you have to eat. You just kind of have to do it a little bit. I think maybe a little too frequently. You're kind of always eating and have to sleep. So yeah, like it does add an interesting element to the game where if you're caught out in the cold, you might just pick a lock to a house to get in, just to get warm. Whereas before you might have just walked past. So that's been pretty cool.
And I could see inventory management. I already was always at the limit, and so I could see food pushing inventory management more.
Yeah, they did add items to help with that. They added these backpacks that increase your carrying capacity pretty much right from the beginning. So they accounted for that a bit. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't think I'm going to play much more. I might finish the Mage Quest line, but I may have already had my fill. I've played hundreds of hours of Skyrim, so
yeah.
But that's it. That's all.
I've never touched it.
Really?
Oh, no.
Wow.
I remember, Evan, you were crazy about it when it first came out way back. I remember you telling me about it, but I've never had PC. I never had capabilities to play it.
Well, it's a 10-year-old game now.
I think it's on Xbox. Game Pass now.
I think it's on. I think you can play it on your microwave these days.
Yeah.
It's on
I know. That's why I'm like, maybe now's the time, because I think it is on Game Pass.
Yeah.
All right, cool. That brings us to the end of another episode of, what's this show called again? Earthborne Games Podcast. Please reach out to us. I did have a brain fart right there. Reach out to us, info@earthbornegames.com. We appreciate you all listening to us week after week. We love you, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.